Chosen ones, it is no coincidence that you clicked on this video today, but rather it is the call of the universe that now the universe is hearing your cries. Chosen ones, you have been chosen to walk a path that is not always easy. You have weathered storms, felt the weight of the world, and yet you are still standing. Remember, you are never alone. For the chosen ones who walk a path that often feels heavy, uncertain, and challenging, know this: your pain is seen and your cries are heard. There is a divine hand that holds your fate, and in your moments of deep struggle, you are never alone. It is time to leave it in God's hands. Being chosen by God often brings trials that others cannot understand. The burden you carry is real, but it is not without purpose. Your journey is one that is being guided, even when it feels heavy. When the world does not see your struggles, remember that God sees everything. He sees the quiet battles you fight when no one is looking. He feels the pain in your heart. God sees every tear, hears every prayer. In moments of uncertainty, trust that His love surrounds you and His plan unfolds in ways we cannot always understand. Now is the happiest time for the chosen ones. Leave it in God's hands. He sees your pain and hears your cries. Now that your prayers have finally been heard, it's time for you to shine strong. Before the universe plunges you into this deep change, you can give your feedback to the universe by commenting 999. And if you are not connected to the energy of this channel, you can join by subscribing to the channel. Understanding the weight of being chosen. Being chosen by God is a profound experience that often comes with a unique sense of responsibility, challenges, and sometimes isolation. It's something many people might not fully grasp, but you know deep inside that you've been set apart for a special purpose. This being chosen is not just a label or a privilege. It is often a journey that tests you in ways others may not understand. The weight you carry is real, and it can feel heavy, even lonely at times. Yet this burden is not without purpose. There is a deep meaning behind it, a purpose that goes beyond what you can always see or explain in the moment. When you are chosen, life may bring trials that feel unfair or inexplicable. You might wonder, why me? Why am I going through this when others seem to have it easier? It can be incredibly hard to deal with hardships when you don't see the full picture. The truth is, the path you're walking is different because it's tailored for your growth, your strength, and ultimately for the unique mission that God has entrusted to you. This doesn't make the suffering any less real, but it does give it a deeper context. The tears you shed, the struggles you face, are all part of a refining process. It's like gold being purified in fire. The heat is intense, but it's necessary to bring out the purest form of the metal. In the same way, your trials are meant to refine you, to strengthen your faith, and to deepen your connection with God. It's not that God wants you to suffer, but rather that He is using these difficult moments to shape you for something greater. Sometimes, the weight you feel is simply part of that process. It's also important to remember that even when you don't see it, God knows exactly where you are going. You might feel lost, overwhelmed, or unsure of your next step, but God has a view of your entire journey. He sees the beginning, middle, and end, and He is guiding you, even when it feels like you're walking in darkness. This is where trust comes in. Trusting that God has a plan, even when you don't fully understand it, is key to enduring the weight of being chosen. This trust doesn't mean you won't have doubts or moments of weakness. In fact, it's natural to question why things are happening the way they are. But in those moments, you can find comfort in knowing that every hardship you face is woven into a bigger tapestry that God is creating. It's not wasted. Every tear, every moment of pain is part of a story that is still unfolding. Being chosen means you are part of something much bigger than yourself. Your life has a purpose that is connected to the divine, even if you can't see it all at once. There will be times when you feel overwhelmed, when the weight feels like too much to bear. But those are the times when you can lean on the fact that you are not carrying it alone. God is walking with you, sometimes even carrying you through the darkest valleys. God sees your pain. When you are going through struggles that no one else sees, you can feel very lonely. It's like carrying a heavy burden silently day after day and wondering if anyone really understands what you are going through. You may smile on the outside, going about your daily life, but inside there is a burden that never lessens. In those moments, it's easy to feel invisible, as if the world has ignored your pain. But even when no one else sees what you are enduring, God sees everything. He sees the quiet battles you fight when no one is looking. He feels the pain that exists in your heart. God's awareness of your pain is intimate and complete. While others may ignore the subtle signs you give, God does not. He sees not just your external struggles, but also the quiet battles you fight when no one is looking. The late nights when your thoughts race, the moments when your heart is filled with pain that words can't describe, He sees it all. Nothing is hidden from God. He knows how much you are hurting, even when you don't say anything. Sometimes the deepest wounds are the ones we don't talk about. There are hurts we carry in silence, not because we don't want help, but because the pain feels too deep and too private to be shared. These are the moments when we feel like no one, even those closest to us, understands the depth of our pain. And that's where God steps in. Even when you can't express your pain, He knows it. The tears that never fall, the unspoken heartache, God knows it all. It's comforting to realize that God never ignores your struggles. He is with you in every quiet moment, in every silent cry of your heart. You may feel like no one else sees or cares, but God's love for you is so deep and so personal that nothing about your pain escapes His notice. He not only sees it, He feels it with you. The Bible tells us how close God is to the brokenhearted, how He binds up their wounds. This means that your pain is not just something God watches from afar. He is with you in the midst of it, offering comfort and understanding. When the world feels indifferent or apathetic to your suffering, it can lead you to question your worth or wonder if anyone really cares. But God's constant presence and awareness reminds you that you are never alone in your pain. He knows every detail, and He cares deeply about what you are going through. This is a profound reminder that even when you think you are going through your worst days, God is walking with you. The cries of your soul, no matter how private or hidden from the outside world, are fully known to God. He understands the depths of your heart in a way no one else can. While it is human nature to seek validation or recognition from others, the truth is that God's understanding is what matters most. His knowledge of your pain is absolute, and His compassion for you is endless. So, when the world does not understand your struggles, hold on to the truth that God sees. He sees everything, including the pain that seems invisible to others. You are never forgotten, never does He ignore you. He knows the pain you endure, and in His perfect timing, He will bring healing and peace. Until then, you can rest in the assurance that your struggles are not in vain, for they are always seen by the one who loves you the most. God hears your cry. When you find yourself in moments of desperation, crying out to God, it can sometimes feel as if your prayers are met with silence. You might wonder if your pleas are reaching Him at all, or if they're just vanishing into the void. It's easy to feel discouraged, especially when the answers don't come as quickly as you hoped or in the way you expected. But despite how it feels in those moments of waiting, know this: God hears you. Every prayer, every cry from the depths of your soul reaches Him. He is not distant, and He is not deaf to your pain. It's natural to expect immediate responses, especially when you're in distress. When life gets hard, when everything seems to be falling apart, we tend to want relief right away. It's as if we think that if God really cared, He'd intervene instantly. But the truth is, God's timing is not the same as ours. He sees the bigger picture, the one we can't always understand in the moment. Just because the answer doesn't come right away doesn't mean God isn't listening or that He's indifferent to your cries. He is always listening, and your prayers are precious to Him. Think about it like this. Sometimes the silence isn't a sign that God isn't there, but rather that He's working in ways you can't yet see. It's in these moments that faith becomes so crucial. Trusting that God hears you, even when everything feels quiet, is a powerful act of faith. You may not always get the answer you want, but that doesn't mean God hasn't heard your prayer. In fact, He is always aware of your needs, often even before you can fully express them. God is not just passively listening. He is actively engaged with your life. Every time you reach out to Him, He hears the full weight of your pain, your fear, and your longing. And He doesn't just hear the words you say, He understands the emotions behind them, the tears you shed, the frustrations you feel. None of it escapes His notice. Even in the moments when you're too tired or too overwhelmed to put your feelings into words, God knows what's in your heart. He hears the prayers that are too deep for words, but His response to your prayers is always in perfect timing, even if that timing doesn't align with your own expectations. It's hard to wait, especially when you feel like you're barely holding on. But God's timing is based on His infinite wisdom and His perfect love for you. He knows what you need and when you need it. Sometimes the answer might come in a way that's different from what you imagined, or it might come later than you expected. But it will always come in the way that's best for you. God sees the entire arc of your life, and His answers are always part of His larger plan for your growth, healing, and ultimate good. The waiting can be excruciating, and it can be hard to hold on to hope in those times. But know that in the silence, God is still present. He is still working. He has heard your cries, and He is preparing the right answer for you. Often, the delays are not denials. Instead, they are opportunities for growth, for your faith to deepen, and for you to draw closer to God in ways you might not have imagined. Trust that God is not ignoring you. He has never turned a deaf ear to your cries, and He never will. So when you feel like your prayers are going unanswered, remember that God hears every single one. You are not speaking into the silence. You are being heard by the one who knows exactly what you need and who loves you beyond measure. In His perfect timing, He will respond, and when He does, it will be in a way that brings you exactly what your heart needs, even if that looks different from what you first thought. Until that moment comes, trust in His presence, His timing, and His unfailing love. The power of surrender. Surrendering to God is not about giving up or admitting defeat. It's about recognizing that you don't have to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders alone. In life, it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that we need to solve all our problems by ourselves, that every struggle is ours to conquer and every pain is ours to bear. But the truth is, there's a point where our own strength isn't enough, where trying to control everything just leads to more exhaustion and frustration. This is where the power of surrender comes in. Surrendering your worries, pain, and confusion to God is an act of trust. It's saying, I don't have all the answers, but I know you do. It's realizing that God's understanding, wisdom, and power far exceed anything we can comprehend. When you surrender, you're not abandoning your responsibilities or pretending everything is fine. You're simply placing your trust in a higher power, acknowledging that you don't have to figure it all out on your own. This kind of surrender is freeing because it shifts the burden off of you. Often, we carry so much, worrying about the future, stressing over things we can't control, holding on to pain that weighs us down. These things can consume us, taking up our energy and peace. But when you let go and surrender those burdens to God, you make space for peace, for clarity, and for a deeper connection with Him. You're no longer trying to handle everything by yourself, but instead trusting that God, who is infinitely more capable, is in control. Surrendering doesn't mean that life will be perfect or that all your problems will disappear overnight, but it does mean that you are no longer relying solely on your limited perspective. God sees things you can't. He knows what you need, even when you're unsure. By placing your troubles in His hands, you're inviting Him to work in ways you may not even expect, to bring solutions, peace, or comfort that you might not have imagined. It's easy to think that holding on to control will keep you safe, but often, the more we try to control, the more tangled things become. Surrender is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of wisdom. It's recognizing that there is a power greater than yours, a divine presence that is guiding your life, even in the moments when things feel chaotic. You don't have to carry the confusion and pain all by yourself. God is there, ready to take that weight from you, if you are willing to hand it over. Surrender also involves trust in God's timing. Often, part of our frustration comes from wanting things to happen on our schedule, but God's timing is perfect. When you surrender, you're not just giving up your problems, you're giving up the need to control when and how they get solved. You're trusting that God's plan for you is unfolding in its own perfect time, even if it's hard to see in the moment. The beauty of surrender is that it doesn't leave you empty. Instead, it fills you with a sense of peace and assurance that you are not alone. By letting go of the things that weigh you down, you open yourself up to receive God's grace, strength, and guidance. You begin to see that surrender is not about losing control, but about finding peace in trusting the one who truly has control. God's timing is perfect. When you're going through a difficult season in life, waiting can feel unbearable. Whether you're waiting for healing, for answers, for a breakthrough, or just for some kind of relief from the pain, the passing of time can feel slow and agonizing. In those moments, it's natural to question why things aren't happening faster, why God hasn't stepped in yet, and whether He's truly paying attention to your cries. But the truth is, God's timing is never late. Though it often feels like the waiting is too long, His timing is always perfect. Even when it doesn't align with your expectations. It's easy to become impatient when you're hurting. You might feel like if God truly loved you, He would intervene immediately, take away the pain, or fix the situation right away. But what we often forget is that God sees what we cannot. While we are focused on the present moment, on the immediate discomfort or uncertainty, God is looking at the bigger picture. He sees the full scope of our lives and knows exactly what we need, not just to get through today, but to be prepared for tomorrow, for the next chapter of our journey. Waiting is not easy, and it's okay to acknowledge that. It's human to feel frustrated or anxious when things don't happen on our timetable. But God uses those periods of waiting to do something deeper within us. Every delay, every moment of waiting is preparing you for something greater. It's in these times that your faith can grow stronger, that your character can be refined, and that you can develop a deeper trust in God's plan for your life. While it's hard to see in the moment, waiting often serves a higher purpose. Think about it like a seed planted in the ground. You don't see what's happening beneath the soil, but that doesn't mean growth isn't taking place. The seed is doing exactly what it needs to do. in its own time before it breaks through the surface. In the same way, God is working in your life, even when it feels like nothing is happening. The waiting period is not a void. It's a time of unseen growth and preparation. God's timing is perfect because He knows exactly when you are ready to step into the next phase of your journey. It can be hard to reconcile our desire for immediate answers with the reality that God often moves at a slower, more deliberate pace. But remember, His delays are not denials. Just because something hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it's not going to happen. God may be holding back the answer or the relief you're seeking because He's preparing something better, something you couldn't have imagined in your own timing. Trusting His timing means believing that He is working behind the scenes, orchestrating events in ways that are far beyond your understanding. One of the hardest parts of waiting is letting go of control. We want to know what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and how everything will work out. But part of trusting in God's perfect timing is surrendering that need for control and believing that God's plan is unfolding exactly as it should. It means resting in the assurance that even though things may not be happening according to your schedule, they are happening according to His, and His schedule is always right. God's timing is perfect because He is perfect. He loves you deeply, and He knows the desires of your heart. But He also knows what's best for you, and sometimes that means waiting. It might mean enduring a little longer than you'd like, or walking through a season of uncertainty. But in the end, the waiting will make sense. You'll see how God was carefully preparing you, strengthening you, and aligning the pieces of your life in ways that only He could. So, when you feel impatient, when the waiting seems too hard, remember that God's timing is never late. Trust that He is working even when you can't see it. Every moment of waiting is part of His perfect plan for your life, and in time, you will see that everything has unfolded exactly as it should. Rest in the peace of knowing that God's timing is not just good, it is perfect. Leave it in God's hands. At some point in life, you come to realize that no matter how hard you try, there are just some things that are beyond your control. You can give your best effort, plan as thoroughly as possible, and try to anticipate every outcome, but there will always be factors that lie outside your reach. It's in these moments, after you've done all you can, that the best thing you can do is leave the rest in God's hands. Letting go of the need to control every aspect of life doesn't mean you're giving up. In fact, it takes an incredible amount of trust and faith to surrender the things that are out of your hands. It's saying, God, I've done what I can, and now I trust you to handle the rest. This act of surrender is freeing because it reminds you that you're not alone in this journey. You don't have to figure everything out or carry every burden by yourself. God sees the bigger picture in a way that you never can. You may be focused on the struggle you're facing right now, the confusion, the pain, or the uncertainty that's weighing on you. But God is looking beyond the immediate situation. He sees how this moment fits into the greater story of your life, how what feels like a struggle today will eventually become a part of your testimony. When you leave things in His hands, you're trusting that He knows exactly how to turn even the hardest moments into something meaningful and good. It's natural to want to control outcomes, especially when you're dealing with uncertainty. The unknown can be terrifying, and it's easy to feel like if you could just manage every detail, you could ensure that everything turns out okay. But the reality is, there will always be things that are outside of your control, and trying to hold on to that control can actually make things harder, adding unnecessary stress and anxiety to your life. When you finally let go, when you leave it in God's hands, you allow yourself to find peace. You recognize that you're not supposed to carry every burden on your own. That's why God is there. God's faithfulness is something you can always count on. even when things don't go the way you planned or hoped. He is working in your favor, even when it doesn't feel like it. Sometimes what looks like a setback or an unanswered prayer is actually a part of His larger plan for your growth, for your future, or for your well-being. It can be hard to see that in the moment, but when you trust God enough to leave things in His hands, you're acknowledging that He knows what's best for you, even when you don't. Letting go of control doesn't mean you stop caring or that you become passive about life. It simply means recognizing that, after you've done everything in your power, you can trust God with the rest. It's a reminder that you are His, and He is faithful to carry you through. The things you're facing today are not too big for Him, and they are not outside of His ability to handle. Even when the path ahead seems uncertain, God is already there, working things out for your good. This trust allows you to move forward with a lighter heart, instead of carrying the weight of every decision, every problem, and every outcome. You can release them to God and know that He is capable of handling them. He's not just watching from a distance. He's actively involved in your life, guiding you, protecting you, and turning even the hardest parts of your journey into something beautiful. At the end of the day, after you've done all you can, know that God is faithful. He has never failed you, and He never will. The struggles of today will become a part of your testimony tomorrow, and you will be able to look back and see how God carried you through every step of the way. Leave it in His hands, for He sees the bigger picture, and He will never let you down. Faith in the unseen. Faith is a powerful force, but it's not always easy. It's especially challenging when life presents obstacles and trials that seem to have no clear purpose or resolution. When you're in the middle of hardship, it's natural to want immediate answers, to understand why things are happening the way they are. But the essence of faith isn't about getting those answers right away. It's about trusting in the unseen, in God's wisdom and plan, even when you can't make sense of the situation. Faith calls you to believe in something beyond what your eyes can see and beyond what your mind can comprehend. In a world that often values proof and certainty, faith requires a different kind of strength. It asks you to trust that God is working for your good, even when everything around you seems to suggest otherwise. It's about believing that there's a bigger picture unfolding, even when you can only see a small, confusing piece of it. One of the most difficult parts of faith is letting go of the need to understand every trial you face. As humans, we naturally want to know why we're going through certain struggles. We ask ourselves, what did I do wrong? Or, why is this happening to me? But faith teaches us that not everything has an immediate or obvious explanation. Sometimes the answer to your pain doesn't come in the form you expect. It may not come as a solution or a resolution to your circumstances, but rather as growth, as inner strength, or as a deeper relationship with God. When you have faith in the unseen, you are trusting that God is working in ways that you may never fully understand. His ways are higher than ours, and often beyond our comprehension. It's easy to believe in God's goodness when everything is going well, but true faith shines in the moments of uncertainty and pain. It's in these moments that you're invited to trust that God's plan is still unfolding, even if you can't see it yet. Think about the times in your life when something didn't go the way you wanted, but later you could see how it worked out for the best. That's faith in action. It's trusting that God is always at work, even in the delays, the detours, and the disappointments. The answers may not come right away, and they may not come in the way you expect, but faith reminds you that they will come in God's perfect timing and in the form that is best for you. This kind of trust doesn't mean you won't have questions or doubts. Faith doesn't ask you to ignore your feelings or pretend that everything is fine. It's okay to be confused, to wonder, and even to struggle with your belief at times. But faith invites you to hold on to the truth that God is still in control, even when life feels out of control. It means accepting that God's ways are not our ways, and that He is doing something greater than we can see in the moment. Trusting in the unseen is also about letting go of your expectations for how God should respond to your prayers or your pain. We often think that if God truly loves us, He will solve our problems in the way we want or fix things according to our timetable. But faith means trusting that God knows what's best for you, even when it doesn't match what you had in mind. It's about believing that His wisdom far exceeds our understanding, and that He is working for your good, even in ways that are hidden from view. In the end, faith in the unseen is about surrendering to God's love and trusting His plan, even when it's not clear. It's about believing that He is with you in every step of your journey, even when the road is difficult. Faith is not a guarantee that life will be easy, but it is a guarantee that you are never alone. God is always present, always working, and always guiding you, even when you can't see how. Trust in the unseen means believing in His goodness, His timing, and His perfect plan for your life, no matter what. Strength in weakness. There's a common belief that strength means never showing weakness, that you must always be resilient and capable no matter what life throws at you. But the truth is, strength doesn't come from pretending that everything is fine or carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders without breaking. Real strength is found in recognizing your own limitations, in acknowledging that you can't do it all on your own. And it's in those moments of weakness, when you feel completely drained and powerless, that God's strength shines the brightest. God doesn't expect you to be strong all the time. He doesn't ask you to hold everything together on your own. In fact, He knows that you can't, and that's why His strength is there for you. It's when you reach the end of your own strength, when you feel like you have nothing left to give, that God steps in and shows you what His power can do. His strength is made perfect in your weakness, because it's in those moments of vulnerability that you're most open to receiving His help. Life can be exhausting. There are times when the challenges you face seem too big, too overwhelming. And no matter how hard you try, it feels like you're barely holding on. Maybe it's physical exhaustion from pushing yourself too hard, or maybe it's emotional exhaustion from carrying too many burdens. Whatever the source, there comes a point where you just can't keep going on your own. But this is where the beauty of God's strength comes in. You don't have to keep going on your own, because He is there to carry you through. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more uplifting content. Your support means the world to me.